Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. What's going on, guys? Now, in this video, it's gonna be kind of piggybacking off of something I said in my Adrian Granado's video. I mentioned that Granado's, as you guys can see right here, is ranked number 7 by the WBC. And when I was looking at these rankings, I just noticed that there were some shaky or questionable things about these rankings, so I wanted to kind of get into that. Boxing rankings are always a tricky thing, but in this particular case, I thought some of these were really weird. Outside of that, we'll be bringing on these rankings and going through the resumes of some of the questionable guys in the rankings. Outside of that, we'll also be talking about PBC fighter and inactivity this year and what that means for boxing moving forward. Now, we'll start with the WBC 140-pound rankings. Now, obviously, boxing rankings are very, I don't know, they can be very easily influenced. You know, a promoter with a certain political tie to a sanctioning body can always pay X amount of dollars to bump a guy up. And that seems to be the case because when you look at these WBC 140-pound rankings, I mean, it makes 0 sense whatsoever. So we'll start here. This is where I think the question marks begin for me. Now, as you guys can see, Rances Bartholomew is ranked number 2. Now, obviously, I love Rances Bartholomew. You guys know I've done videos with him. I interviewed him. I went to his fight. I went to his fight as a fan. Sat in the stands with my friend, and we watched Bartholomew beat Mickey Bay. But Bartholomew has not even fought at 140 pounds yet. As you guys can see, this is his box rec. His last fight, like I said, June 3rd, Mickey Bay, here in Hollywood. He fought him here, and then that was his last fight at lightweight. And then he said, "Hey, I'm moving up to 140." Now, I don't have a complete problem with it. I mean, I have a problem with this from the standpoint that like Bartholomew hasn't really fought at 140, but I don't have a problem with this from the standpoint that like Terrence Carter might have to fight Rances Bartholomew, but still, the fact that he's ranked number 2 in the WBC rankings, it's a crying shame because he hasn't really done anything at 140 as yet. But we all know Rances is a talented fighter. Odds are he will probably go on to do great things at 140 later on. Now this one right here, another guy that I've done interviews with on the channel and have a cool connection to, and that's Imam. Amir, the young master Imam, hasn't really had a notable fight since last winter when he fought Adrian Granados in a title eliminator, and he basically got his ass whooped, upset of the year. And since last year, he's only had one fight. I'll go to his box rec. Since then, Amir only had one fight. So as you guys can see, November 28th of last year, that's almost a year ago. Since then, he had a smaller fight. He fought a guy named Wilfredo Asuna in Pittsburgh at Team Stearns Hall. Pittsburgh, shout out to Thunderdome. But as you guys can see, this guy is not no cream of the crop type of fighter. It was just a fight to keep him busy because he had been inactive for so long, just like pretty much all of Don King's fighters. Like even Trevor Bryan, who's my friend, I talked to him yesterday. He's having the same problem staying busy, getting fights. But Amir, you know, a lot of people rated Amir Imam very highly when he was coming up through the ranks. A lot of people thought that this guy would go on to become a huge force at 140. And who's to say that he can't still be a big time force at 140? We'll have to see how his confidence holds up when he gets back into the ring with a real top level fighter. But I've always been of the mindset that Amir Imam was like probably one of the best guys as far as beating Terrence Carter at 140. He had the best chance, one of the best chances. But yeah, he doesn't deserve to be in the top 10 right now, let alone the top 3. And right now he's 3rd in the WBC rankings, and really all he's done is beat a guy with 19 losses. So Imam, you know, that didn't make any sense. Now we had these guy right here, John Molina Jr. You know, at 140, he really, outside of the Provodnikov win, he really was taking L's left and right. Lost to Matisse via KO, lost to Humberto Soto, got outboxed by Adrian Broner, and then got a little stay busy win over Jorge Romero, and that wasn't even at 140. He fought at 143. So I guess that was a welterweight fight. Not really sure what the deal was there, but yeah, John Molina Jr. To be perfectly honest, at 140 at least, hasn't done a damn thing outside of the Boronikov win since 2013 when he stopped undefeated Mickey Bay, and that's quite a while ago. So what I'm saying is, like, you look at these rankings, and you have Felix Diaz as well, who's a good fighter, but you have all these guys rated above a guy like Adrian Granados, and he's been someone that throughout the course of his career, has had a tough road, unlike a lot of these guys that I've been talking about. Granados, you look at his record, he's 18-4-2. Now you look at the 4 losses, the 2 draws. We'll go through his resume real quickly. Look, he fought a lot of names you guys recognize now. He fought some guy here named Jose Juan Fuentes, and he explained this to me. He said something about, I forgot what he told me, but it was in the interview. He explained something about this decision right here. Forgot what he said, though. He fought a very experienced Leonardo Tyner, in his 9th fight. Got thrown to the sharks in that fight. In his 11th fight, he fought Frankie Gomez in a fight. Obviously Frankie Gomez is a guy who's went on to become a top 10 level guy and beat the crap out of Mauricio Barrera. Look, Granados fought Tyner, Frankie Gomez, fought Kermit Cintron to a draw. Fought a guy in Felix Diaz that has proven himself to be a solid fighter at 147. Then you have a guy in Brad Solomon, another guy who's been solid fighter throughout his course of his career. So and that all led up to the Amir Imam fight. So when you look at Granados and the 4 losses, he's someone that has put his time in, and this win over Amir Imam, who at the time was a very, very highly touted prospect. A lot of people had Amir Imam becoming one of the better fighters in the division, and right now, his career looks like it's on a downward spiral with that loss, with Don King not being the power he once was in boxing, with just all that going on. So I'm just saying, man, you guys complain a lot about the corruption in boxing, and he had it right here, blatantly right in your face. You have guys like Bartholomew, who hasn't fought at 140, and Amir Imam, who hasn't beat anybody in quite some time in the top 3. So it's food for thought. Wanted to point that out because that is something I noticed. But yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to get off my chest. Now, another thing I kind of wanted to talk about was the Premier Boxing Champions and PBC and their fighter inactivity. It's been something that's been well noted. And shout out to Rafael Calvo. He posted this picture earlier. Now there's a little picture here, and as you guys can see, this is a chart or a graphic of PBC fighters and guys who have and the amount of time guys have fought. Now as you guys can see, there's hella guys with only 1 fight this year. We had Laura Thurman with 1 fight, Laura 1 fight, both the Charles only had 1 fight, Amir Khan only had 1 fight, Marcus Brown only had 1 fight, Ransom Bartholomew only had 1 fight. You're seeing a lot of the notable guys only getting a certain amount of fights. Jared Hurd, another notable guy, only had 1 fight. Peter Bieb only had 1 fight. Guys with no fights, Devin Alexander, Peter Quillen, those guys haven't been fighting for other reasons outside of promotional reasons, but Omar Figueroa and Lamont Peterson and Julio Cesar Chavez and Abner Mares, these are all guys who are notable names. And Abner Mares, he was supposed to fight last year, if you guys remember, because the Thurman-Porter fight was scheduled for December of last year, I believe. And he was on the undercard, and that got scraped from the undercard, and now it's supposed to be a separate card. And eventually, he wound up not even fighting, period, and it's been a while. So, as you guys can see, only a couple of fighters share the distinction of having 3 fights this year on PBC, and that's guys like Caleb Plant, good prospect, Tevin Farmar, and Erickson Lubin. So, what I'm saying is, this is a bad sign for Al Haymon and PBC. Now, look, I'm not one of those. I know a lot of you guys on here who are very pro Al Haymon, very pro PBC. You have this mindset like I want PBC to fail. If you go on my wall, because my little YouTube set, I have about 1, 2, three, four. I have 5 credentials on the wall that represent each fight I've covered. Um, and 2 of those 5 credentials are PBC credentials. And I gotta say, PBC, as far as the way they treat the media, does a great job in comparison to the other promotional outfits I've had experiences with so far. So with that being said, there are some things they do really well, but this is a bad sign. When you have this many, talented fighters, and you're trying to go in a certain direction and push your brand forward and kind of set a precedence for what you got going on with your stable of fighters, and you can't even keep them active, I think it speaks volumes to where PBC is at right now. And all those overinflated purses, mismatches, uncompelling fights, it's catching up to them, and they're going to have to put on some big time fights, and we've heard that they're going to be putting on bigger fights in the beginning of next year. We've heard a lot of things with PBC. It's time at this point. It's time to put up or shut up, because let's just think beyond the realm of boxing fans and the YTBC for a second. The reality is, for a lot of people in America and people who don't watch boxing, that if they have watched boxing or come across boxing in the last year or so, it's probably been a PBC fight, and it's probably been a PBC fight that was a mismatch. So PBC is setting a very, very bad example, and you're not giving really people a good impression of boxing right now. And it's time to start giving people great impressions of boxing. And PBC has a chance to really do some big things and push the sport forward and their brand forward. And Al Haymon could really do a good job and potentially, stake his claim and have his, have a huge share of what goes on in boxing. But as of right now, you guys can see the C list in front of me. There are so many guys who are inactive. So, look, I'm actually rooting for PBC to start putting some of these fights on. I want to see Danny Garcia versus Keith Thurman, or I've talked about many times, Keith Thurman versus Earl Spence versus Danny Garcia. Just a lot of good fights can be made with PBC, but they're not being made. And look, man, we gotta call a spade a spade. Right now, they're failing miserably, and a lot of you guys out there who are pro PBC or might have you might get credentials and you might have some sort of stake with PBC. You're not gonna say these things because it'll get you in trouble. Me, I don't care, honestly. I really don't care. PBC right now is in big trouble, and I really hope that they get it right with their matchmaking and put on some better fights, because you can't fool the public. The public knows what a good fight is, and the public knows what a mismatch is. Right now, PBC's that's catching up to them. So right now, boxing's in a very as far as the perception of boxing from a mainstream perspective, from a mainstream outlook, from people who don't watch boxing, it's in a very precarious situation, and I think PBC should be very conscious of that and put their best foot forward, making some of these big fights happen next year. Because, the more boxing, as far as delaying fights and letting it marinate, the more that happens, the more this sport becomes a niche sport. Which there's no problem with that. There's positives for boxing being a niche sport, but part of me always wants boxing to be at least somewhat on the mainstream level, even if it's the 6th most popular sport in America. And honestly, I don't think you could say it's the 6th most popular sport in America right now, because you have baseball, basketball, football, hockey, soccer. You have college football, college basketball, UFC. Is NASCAR. Is boxing even in the 10th most popular sport in America? I mean, hey, it's a valid question to ask, and I think PBC has had a huge chance to make some strides and kind of clean up some of the black eyes that a lot of people experienced from the Floyd Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, but it's done a really bad job. So we're not being biased here. We're just calling it as it is. PBC needs to put the best foot forward to make some of these fights happen, and I want them to move forward, and I want them to do that. So yeah, man, just want to get this off my chest. And hopefully, like I said, the WBC rankings can get fixed one day. Probably not, though. James Toney was right. We be crooks. That's what they're looking like right now, a bunch of crooks, because there's no way that Bartholomew or Imam should be in the top 3. But hey, it is what it is. It's boxing. We know it's not a regulated sport, so we're gonna get a bunch of shadiness like that. But PBC as well. They got to put the best foot forward. They have to make these big fights happen. No more paying Arizlandi Lara $1 million plus to fight Jan Zevic, or any of that nonsense. It's time to make their stable fighters, the top ones that they want to protect at least. It's time to make them start behaving like fighters and putting them in there in exciting fights. So let me know what you guys think. Leave your comments down below. And you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. So until next time, take care, guys.